Hello and welcome to some circulating energy on the edge. So, very compact circulating energy. Anyways, I'm about to bring my hands onto screen just so that you get an idea of how tiny, how diminutive this little knife is. So let's get that open. So, what was all that waffle about? This is the CIVIVI Ki-V. Now, Ki, what does that word mean, or is it letters? So Ki is the chemical formula for potassium iodide. Is that relevant to this knife? I don't really know, but it could also be the Chinese word Ki, pronounced Qi, and that is this circulating life energy thought to be present in all things, according to Chinese philosophy. And in traditional Chinese medicine, it is the balance of negative and positive in the body that is essential for good health. Then again, it can also be the Japanese word, and that's the word for air or atmosphere or feelings. I don't really know, but there it is, the CIVIVI Ki-V, an Ostap Hel designed knife. So the third now Ostap Hel knife design that I have had on the channel. So previously I had the Wee Pier, and then quite recently the Real Steel G5 Metamorph. And I've spoken about his design sort of being the epitome of clean design and little subtle design elements in his knives. So the more you look, the more you see these little design elements. And not any different on this little knife, a small knife with a lot of little design elements and things, there's a good word, going on on the knife. Right, so now after all that, I'm going to be doing the usual. So we'll go through materials, then dimensions and weight, and then we will dive into design and attributes of this tiny little knife. So we've got a blade steel of 9CR 18 MOV, so a sort of a budget blade steel, but I think fit for purpose for a little knife like this and for what you would use a little knife like this. Handle is G10. Liner, and it's got little hidden liners on the inside that I will show you a little bit later. So liner stainless steel, clip stainless steel, screws are Torx and also stainless steel. And then, believe it or not, this little knife runs, the blade runs on caged ceramic ball bearings. So there it is. Right, let's speak about dimensions and weight and lay that down there, and I hope you can still see it. It's so tiny, and black on black, I suppose, as well. So we've got a blade length of 39.4 millimeters, and that's 1.55 inches. Yeah, that is tiny. We've got a blade thickness of 2.5 millimeters, and that's 0.1 inch. Handle thickness at its thickest point is 11.5 millimeters, and that's 0.45 inches. And then overall length is a grand 100 millimeters or 10 centimeters, and that is 3.94 inches. And then weight, and I've got their stated weights on here. Let me just close that, and I don't even know will this actually register on my increasingly dirty scale. Time for a little bit of a wipe down on the scale, but never mind, let's get that cranked up. We're after the weight, not the right. Have we got life? We do. So let's see if this even registers on here. 1.4, bang on with CIVIVI's stated weights, and let's just see how that reads in grams. 41 grams, so they've got 39.6, around about 40 grams is their stated weight. So, well, there or thereabouts. Anyway, right, now let's get this open. And let me start, as I always do, with the blade shape. And this little knife is causing me big problems because how do you describe that blade shape? Is it a modified drop point? Is it a modified Warncliffe? I'm not really sure. Interestingly enough, if you get it upside down, I probably would have been able to describe it there as a drop point blade, except that it isn't that way around, it's that way around. So we have an absolutely straight edge on the knife, and by the way, as per CIVIVI and mother brand Wee's normal standards, it is beautifully done, perfectly straight, neat and sharp out of the box. but we've got the straight edge, as I said, and a flat grind on that. And interestingly enough, so if we look at the ricasso, we've got this plunge line that goes straight up, and then the ricasso stretches forward and angles and stretches towards the, it's just, I don't know if you caught what I was saying there. So it runs up and then angles towards the spine of the blade. But if you look at the angle of the ricasso there, that angle is exactly the same. It runs parallel to the edge of the blade as well. And this is where we start speaking about those little design cues, those little design elements that Ostap puts into his knife designs. Because if we try and get a little closer, and hopefully the camera is going to pick this up, but the ricasso, that straight line that runs towards the spine, continues all the way to the back edge of the blade. There's a little straight line, and that line divides the swedge from a beveled edge on the spine of the blade. So there's a straight line there. Then that beveled edge, just where the light's catching it there, that line continues onto the bottom line of the swedge running down. So that's a continuous line from the swedge onto that beveled edge. And then that's a continuous line that continues past that little corner all the way to the corner. So what we get at that little point right there is those two lines cross perfectly, and that is just so incredibly neatly done. A beautiful little detail that is happening at that point. Really, really stunning. Right, so, and then another little clever thing here. So the edge of the blade starts there. We don't have an edge there. So what that actually is, this straight point here, is actually your sharpening, in inverted commas, choil. So if you turn the knife like that, and imagine that's the edge of a normal blade, and then you would have the sharpening choil that then goes back up, and that's exactly what that does, except that, it now continues as a straight line from the knife. But that is, in effect, your sharpening choil. So easy enough to keep this little blade sharp. And there's another nice little design element. So where the handle runs straight onto that sharpening choil. The spine of the blade I mentioned has got that little beveled edge, very, very tidily done on the spine of the blade there. And then you can see some jimping a little bit forward on the blade as well. So we'll speak about that in a second as well. Right, have I covered off everything on the blade? Well, there's a little bit of jimping on the tang of the blade there as well. And that jimping, when the knife is closed, you can see that that sits at the back of the blade there. But we've got jimping on the tang of the blade there as well, and that's what you get hold of. And it's sort of a push button type deployment. You push in that direction on that, and the little blade really flies out. Nice action on this blade, and then it exposes the jimping that was sitting at the back there now sits in the front, and that gives you a little bit of purchase place for your finger over there. And then we've got that landing spot, and don't push this is a slip joint if I haven't mentioned it, but you've got a little bit of jimping on the back of the blade. And I'm gonna speak about how you would use this knife in a second. So let's first speak about the design elements around the handle. And here again, you've got these little angled cuts in the handle, and if you look at it that way as well, there's a little angled cut over there, and all these angles continue that design language that you've got on the blade. It is really, for such a little knife, there is so much clever design happening on this handle. It is superb. When I first saw this knife, you kind of go, it's a little bit odd, and what am I going to speak about on this knife? And by the way, when I picked it up, I didn't actually realize it was an Ostap Hel design. Got it home and started seeing all these little design elements on it, and then picked up very subtly, by the way, hidden in there, just show you that little marking on the blade. You can see Ostap Hel on the blade there, and then it kind of made sense to me because I know all these little design elements that were sort of, in inverted commas, hidden on those other knives that I reviewed. But anyway, these little faceted lines that just, again, continue this design language. You know, again, if you look at the angle of that cut on the blade there, that where the ricasso is, and then you look at the little angle on the cutout that's around the pivot, that top one, those two angles match up as well. And then the spine of the blade, with it open like that, you can see the little notch cut into there as well. And it seems that Ostap does these little notches, these clever little notches on his designs, and even on this tiny little knife, he's got that going there as well. And then close the handle, and we've got this little cut back over there that is also just a tiny little design element. But once again, you've got that little line, that angle there, and then you've got another angle where my finger is, and then another angle cut on the blade, and all those little angles actually match up. It is so tidy and so well thought through. So, you know, as I say, at first it's just this tiny little knife, and then you look at it closely and you just see how beautifully considered and well designed this little knife is. You know, nothing's been left to chance. All these little angles that are so considered, and so they all run in the same direction, and the angle matches up. It is absolutely beautifully done. The G10 handle has a little bit of texturing to it. It is pretty slick, but there's a little bit of texturing on the handle to give you a little bit of grip as well. This little cutout around the pivot, by the way, seems to be something that Ostap does in a lot of his knives. Well, certainly the two that I've looked at have a similar thing around the pivot. The dainty little pocket clip, tip up carry, not reversible, but nicely the way that has been angled, and it is deep carry, so one of those wrap around little pocket clips, and you can see that it is countersunk. I don't know if you can see that, but it is countersunk into the handle. So how will you carry this knife? I'm not really sure. You know, it certainly will fit in a standard pocket, but this would also fit into, you know, the little loose change money pocket that you have in jeans. Typically, you know, that little extra little pocket that you have, it'll fit, and it does fit so neatly into that. So it's kind of a little utility knife, you know, for those little tasks when it's the sort of knife you can always have on you. You know, how often are you in a position, in a place where you might not have a knife or can't take a knife, and you need just something to cut something small with, to nip off a piece of I don't know, a little piece of lint sticking off a piece of clothing, or something, you know. But I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about this knife, but after getting it home, I kind of want it, and sort of there's a million uses for a little knife like this, because you can stow it away anywhere, and if you need that knife and you don't have a knife on hand because you can't have another knife on hand, this certainly will come in hand. There we go. How many times can you use the word hand? And then in terms of use, that cut back in the blade really does make sense, especially for a small knife like this. So, you know, kind of get it in hand like that, and you can get that blade almost flat against a surface. And if you get the knife in hand like that, and that's where this jimping on the back really does make sense. So get the knife in hand like that against a surface, and I'm going to pull in the box for the knife just to kind of show you what I mean. So you imagine this is the surface, and you're holding the knife like that. That just absolutely works perfectly and is really, really comfortable to use like that. So, you know, imagine doing little drawing cuts and precision type work with this blade. Very, very nice. I really do actually like this knife, and like I say, I didn't really know how I felt about it. I sort of brought it onto the channel. I thought, it's going to be a little bit of a novelty type thing to get on, but it really is a superbly designed little knife. And again, as per we and CIVIVI standards, it is beautifully finished off. The attention to detail, even on a small knife like this, really is great. You see that little pivot cap with the CIVIVI logo, and again, it is just crisply machined, beautifully done. And little pivot cap, the the Torx screws over there. If I didn't mention it, it is Torx screws all over this knife. And then I also mentioned the hidden liners. So if I turn it there, you might just get the light catching it. Not much to see in there, but it has the stainless steel liner that's completely embedded in the G10. And again, nothing left to chance. We've got the standoffs there, those little hourglass-shaped standoffs on the knife as well. So I mentioned that it is a slip joint, so no lock on the knife, so it simply closes like that. But interesting, a little slip joint, I guess, with a bit of a difference. If we look inside, let's see if I can show this in a way that's going to show for you. But if you look inside there, around about that point, let me bring up a piece of white paper in that might help me in this particular instance. So let's get this at the right angle. So sort of where my fingers are on the inside there, you'll see the two little pieces sticking out from either side of the blade, sticking out from either side of the blade. Those are your little ball bearings. So it has a double detent ball bearing. You've got one on either side of the blade. So, and that is what, let's just see if I can try and show that at just the right angle. You can see those there, and that locks the blade into its open position. Those ball bearings, the one on that side and the one on the other side. So like you'd find on any typical knife where you have that detent normally holding the blade in its closed position, here that's what holds it in its open position, and you have one on either side, and then those do the dual function of also keeping the blade closed again. So waffled on and on there. I hope that did make sense. But again, a beautiful, beautiful little knife. And I say the overall shape and these little angled cuts on it and so on the handle and everything that lines up, it kind of makes me think of a little miniature version of the F117 Nighthawk, the original stealth, in inverted commas, fighter. It has that kind of look about it. Beautiful. So really gorgeous looking little knife. Let me put this down there. I'm going on and on and on about it. And let me do this before I do forget. I need to give my appreciation once again to Blades and Triggers. Here's another little interesting knife from Blades and Triggers. I really do appreciate their support. So check this little knife and other CIVIVI knives and other WE knives and other brands of knives in general and other stuff, other really nice stuff on their website, BNT Online. And guys, I think what that leaves me to do before doing a little bit of a summary on this knife that you can clearly see I really do like is a little bit of a size comparison. And I brought in a few others. This is officially the smallest knife that I have reviewed on the channel. And to give you a sense of how small, I brought in a few other little diminutive knives, little small knives, and here we have the Kaiser Cyberblade, certainly a comparable blade, if a knife, I should say, if you consider also the way that this is all angled, also kind of like that old stealth fighter, that old Nighthawk type shape to it. But wow, I mean, doesn't that just show you how tiny this little knife really is? It really is. Oh, can I say it? Can I say it about a knife? It is really cute and very desirable. Right, so let's get the Cyberblade out of the way. The other one that I brought on was this. This is the Bestek Goblin. At a stage was the smallest knife in my collection, but wow, it looks enormous compared to this little knife. Right, let's get that out the way. And then I've brought out the, what is this? The Benchmade. Oh, I've done this before too. Oh, if he ever meets me, he's going to kick me where I don't want to be kicked. It is the Medford Knife and Tools. It is the Medford Der Hund. Also a tiny little knife, but again, that really does give you some perspective. Right, the Der Hund. And then I brought another Medford out here, and this is the what is this thing called? The Chunky Monkey. So you know, that's a tiny little knife, but even there, You can see how small this is. This really is a knife that you can hide anywhere, stow away anywhere, keep anywhere, in the car, in your pocket, with a suit, in your handbag for the ladies, or I suppose some men. Let's keep going. But it really is a knife that there's no excuse for you not to have a knife on you with a small knife on like this. It really is great. Maybe just a little backup knife. But I really, really do like it. And another beautifully considered and stunningly designed Ostap Hel design knife. I really do like his knives. These clean designs, but with these little clever little design cues. You'll probably find that that angle might be the same as that angle. I'm not really sure. It might be slightly different, but it wouldn't surprise me. And I'm talking about the angle of where the clip attaches. But beautifully made, a lovely knife, beautifully constructed is what I want to say. Another knife from CIVIVI, and we know that CIVIVI is the budget brand of WE, but again, they don't compromise on quality of fit and finish on their knives. A stunning little knife. I really do like it. And I've waffled on and on about this knife, but because in such a small diminutive package, there is so much going on the knife. Let me see if I can lay it down that way and wrap up. It's so tiny that it wants to kind of fall over. I'm gonna try and maybe just hold it like that for a second so you can see the show side on screen. Guys, and that's pretty much it. Oh no, I did want to mention that there is another option on this knife. So this is the all black, clearly, but you also get it in a natural G10 with a stone-washed blade, and that also looks pretty good. So it really is. So you've got a couple of options on that as well. But guys, check it out. Don't judge this knife on its size. It is a beautiful little piece, and I really do urge you, if you can, get one in hand and have a look at it closely, because it is a stunning little knife. Guys, and I think that's it. All that's really left for me to say is to thank you for joining me. I always really do appreciate it. And I would equally appreciate it if you would hit that subscribe button if you haven't yet, and the bell icon so that you can be notified every time I upload a new video. Because as I always do say, I would really love you to join me more often. And other than that, you go well and God bless.